Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious, cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, good people, welcome. Today is summer solstice. So we are going to have a show all about solstice and the shifting and changing of seasons and how those seasons represent cycles of our lives. So this, again, is the show called Connected, and I'm your host, Andrea Dragonfly. And in this talk show, we're really looking at how everything is connected. And I feel like it's an incredible opportunity to bring forward the cycles of the seasons, because when we become more connected into the energy around us, even with the shifting and changing seasons, we can then even open ourselves up more into understanding life and seeing how there's so much happening. We can start to become even more deeper into our experience of living our lives, because we can start to see that there's these patterns, and they can be, more or less, we can count on these patterns throughout our lives. Even with the climate crisis that's happening, we still have these seasons that are growing us and guiding us. So with the summer solstice today, which is the longest day and shortest night of the year, this is for the Northern Hemisphere. We're also celebrating the winter solstice for the Southern Hemisphere, which is the shortest day and the longest night. And I find it interesting because, my daughter did a exchange student program and stayed in Australia for 6 months, where we then had an Aussie student come and live with us. So it was like a year-long process. And because I've always been connected to the seasons, because this has always been a part of this life, death, rebirth process that we're about to jump into and really look at it, how that plays out for us in our lives, I find it quite interesting that of course, through colonialism and with the colonization of South America, they really celebrate the Northern Hemisphere's seasons. So, of course, we look at Christmas. And Christmas usually for us in the Northern Hemisphere is during right around just past winter solstice. And it's a time of going inward. And the real true nature and stories of Christmas is this time of internal connection, really kind of going in, and that during the, that peaceful time of the darkness, when we have the darkest night of the year, and we're building from the darkest night, we then move into the light, and the light begins to return. Well, here in the North America, we're experiencing summer solstice, where we have the longest day and the shortest night. And now in the next couple of days, we are going to begin to see less light as we move ourselves cycling towards winter solstice again in 6 months from now. So this process is interesting because it's a time of reflection, and it's a time of recognizing the growth process. In the indigenous of South America, I'm sorry, not just South America, but of the Southern Hemispheres, including South America, they were also connected to the light, to the ways in which the sun would be the brightest for them in the southern hemisphere during, what our in the northern hemisphere is winter solstice. Up here, it was their summer solstice. Yet again, everything's gotten really convoluted since the colonization of the southern hemisphere. So we're going to talk about this, looking at how these seasons are really representative about where we are in our own life's journey. And we're going to talk about this from looking at this from the wheel of the year. And when we get back from commercial, we're going to pull up some images and we're going to take a look at these images. And these images that will be coming up after this next commercial coming up here will also be posted on my website under the media page. So you can always come back and take a look at these images and really kind of look at it and play with it. Because I know with introducing these ideas, sometimes we want to dive in a little bit deeper. And so we're also looking at summer solstice, also known as the name Lithia. And it's the time, again, where we are really entering into the summer months, which are about 3 months. And this is the time for us to shine, much like the sun. So when we look at the wheel of the year and the calendar, we can begin to see that there's a whole growth process. And that within, okay, so I guess the wheel of the year is up on the chart right now. So we're looking at the screen, and at the south, we can see there is this pie that says Lithia. And this is where the summer solstice is. And this is where it's in the south. We're connected to the equator. This is where the heat is really kind of shining. And so we can also look at this as a medicine wheel, where the sun is in the south is coming towards us, it's shining, it's illuminating, it's bringing out all that we are so that we can really share who we truly are. And so the sun is also, summertime is the time where we are moving in to the phase of our lives that say it's kind of like the phase, or we're at the height of our growth. And we can look at this even with plants and growing cycle of gardens, especially in the northern hemisphere where we get 4 seasons. So I'm going to associate this with the 4 seasons growth cycle, because I know within, Arizona, Southern California, Hawaii, Florida, even a lot of the 4 seasons aren't necessarily seen in the same way as if we were to be in the middle of the United States and then more north. And so this is that time for us to shine. It's also moving into the astrological sign of Cancer. And Cancer is this water sign that's really about us as an individual. It's about us and our home space. If our bodies were our home, and of course we have our homes, but this is where we move into ourselves to really look at who are we? What is it that we deeply want and love? And what do we want to share? Who are we that we can share and shine to the world? And so it's a part of the time where we become reflective in, like the sun is just down, and it's just reflecting down upon the earth, shining so that we can really be seen for exactly who we are. And it's this time where we are at the height of our of who we are, of our personality, of our growth. And when we start to look at this cycle and a much further detailed look, we're going to see that everything is connected. And so even though we're looking at the cycle of a year, this is also connected to reincarnation. It's also connected in some ways to karma. So this is all just kind of playing right out from the last few weeks of what we've been talking about. And so we are going to be looking at the whole cycle, how this can not only look, not can we only see this within 1 year's growth within ourselves, but we can associate it with a whole lifetime as well, our whole incarnation. And so we're going to dive deep into that, really explore it. and make those connections. When we're connected to these cycles on these much different levels, our own personal internal level, 1 year to our lifetime, and then into multiple lifetimes and reincarnation, we can really begin to understand ourselves in such a more profound way. And so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to dive right on in and take a look at that.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hey there, welcome back. So, we are going to dive into this, but I just want to say that it's been a crazy day. Today is my beloved son's birthday, so I've been super busy preparing for him and having a birthday celebration right after the show. But also we've been having some technical difficulties, and so so I've been thrown off a little bit, and so I'm going to try to recoup that ground right here. And look at the seasons. We're going to look at the seasons. So again, we have the chart up on the screen. And we are, if you can see at the very bottom of that chart is Lithia. And, or Litha, and also pronounced as Litha. So we are, again, we are at the point of moving from the Gemini astrology into the Cancer. And this is that part where we're really about how do we feel about ourselves? How are we connected into ourselves? And what is it about ourselves that wants to shine? So we're looking at this in respect to the fact that this is a growth cycle. And I'm going to invite you to take a look at the chart. And at the very top of the chart, we see Yule. And Yule is also winter solstice. So this is in the north. If we look at this chart as if it were a medicine wheel, we have the north at the top, south at the bottom, east to the, of course, usually east is to the right, where we're going to be looking at Imbolc and Ostara. And then we also have the fall, and which is the west. And so we can look at our lives in this way. And so usually with the east of the rising sun, this is the breath of life. When we're born into the world, we take our first breath. And so we can associate the east with the beginning of life. And so we're going to be looking at how Ostara, but it's also known as spring equinox. This is the time where the sprouts of life are coming into the earth. They're moving up through that part of the earth where they've been preparing for that new life. And we're going to even go back one. We're going to go back to what's called Imbolc, which is usually at February 1st to 2nd. And this is the quickening seed. So it's almost, if we think about life, if we think about a pregnancy and where egg meets sperm and there is conception, this would be considered to be February 1st and 2nd, known as Imbolc. This is the quickening seed where the seed becomes fertilized and it begins to quiver in the potential of new life. And if we think about our own lives in February, for the most part, those of us who are living in the Northern Hemisphere, this is that part of the deep midwinter. We have winter solstice, December, usually somewhere around the 21st, 22nd, even sometimes the 23rd of December. And 6 weeks later, we have Imbolc. And so we're going to be talking about how each one kind of leads into the next. But with that Imbolc area, February 1st to 2nd, it's also known as Candlemas. There's other names and different belief systems, different wisdom traditions. But it's the quivering seed of what's the potential for this new life. And we think about it for the new year. Again, February 1st and 2nd. What am I going to be growing for the new year? What is the wisdom that wants to come through and bring me into a whole new level of my own human beingness, right? My growth. What do I want to grow myself on, learn, and do? And so it's that 6-week incubation period from February 1st, 2nd until March 21st, where we begin to move into Ostara, or also known as spring equinox. And it's where that baby or that idea, that project, that what it is that we're bringing into the world actually gets birthed, is during Ostara. So when the plants are coming up and we can see the tulips and we can see a lot of the little grape hyacinths and different things that are popping up. But it's also the time of the, of course, we have the spring chickens and we have the baby bunnies and we have everything that's associated with what we know as Easter. So this is the life coming in and being born. And then, so we can also see that within our lifespan. And then we move into, so that birthing process could be from like 0 until usually like 15, right? So, and at 15, and if this is the old way, let's just even use it as 20. I'm going to say 20 because the world is changing and we're not, 300 years back in the way that things once were. But I'm thinking about puberty, right? Usually women begin to start their menses cycle anywhere between, nowadays 10 to 15. So it's that rite of passage that moves us into being able to be creators ourselves. And so in 6 weeks after what's called Ostara, or spring equinox, we move into May 1st, 2nd. And this is what's known as Beltane. And this is the fertility festivals that used to be done through Earth Center practice. This is where we could see fertilizing the fields and preparing them for seeding so that we can have and grow the crops for the new year. And again, we're looking at old wisdom traditions, earth-centered wisdom traditions, and how they're also connected to our own developmental cycles. So I said 15 because that's usually the time where, the women are fully menstruating, and in previous cultures, they were beginning to consider getting married, which is not the case these days. So like 15 to 20 years old, right? Where even so, that sexual kind of hunger starts to show itself, that where we begin to become more curious. We're learning about ourselves. We're learning about our sexuality. And of course, through that puberty time, it's kind of a natural cycle that's already innately built within us for us to be curious around sex and, sexual activities. So within the Beltane, this is the fertilizing of the seed time of the year where we're really beginning to plant our seeds. We're going out into the gardens. We're planting the fields for the crops, for the wheat and the hay and whatnot for the animals and livestock. And then from Beltane, 6 weeks later, is the time of summer solstice, which is what we have today. And this is where the seeds have taken it. They have fully grown into, you know, their productivity. This is where they're flowering. This is where they're really beginning to seed and showing the world who they are. And we can think about the gardens, like what's blooming in your garden. And that's why I brought it back earlier. Who are you and what is it that you want to show? This is where we begin to bloom ourselves to say, this is who I am and this is what I offer the world. Or these are my thoughts, or this is my mission. This is my purpose. This is my passion, my service. Whatever it is that time of the year where we're coming into the high heat of the summertime. That heat is also connected to passion and purpose and action. We're far more in action during summer than we are in the wintertime, oftentimes, because it's cold for many of us who are in that northern hemisphere where, we're experiencing, cold weather, right? We want to be inside. We want to have, we want to be cozy and warm, right? And so that's the time of the year is definitely just to be out and celebrating and sharing who we are with each other. And then 6 weeks from now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to meet another mark, which is going to be in August for second area, which is also known as Lammas. And it's the first harvest festival. Usually back in the old wisdom traditions, this is where they were, the grains begin to come into the first time for us to collect them and process them. This is also known as the beer festivals and whatnot. And then within Lammas, this is the strength festivals of the men coming together, like the Highlands Games of, Scotland and Ireland, where they're showing off their brawn and their skill sets of being able to work the fields and how they show up in the world and, their strength. And so that's that first harvest of Lammas. And then if we're looking again, if Beltane is like 15, then when we come into summer solstice, we're going to look at this in groups of 15. So 0 to 15 is Ostara, being that child coming into our own fertility at 15. 15 to 30, we come into that fullness of our life. This is who I am. This is my purpose. This is my mission. This is who I am. And then 15 more years later, we get to 45. And that's that Lammas. This is the first harvest festival that says, I've been around. I've done all these things. Look at my wisdom, look at my brawn. Look what I've achieved in my life. And then we move in for 15 more years until we get to 60. And so 60 years old, we're looking also at Mabon, which is the fall equinox, autumnal equinox. And this is where we begin to really harvest our lives. This is where we're harvesting all that we've been growing throughout the year, throughout our lifetime as well, right? And so we're looking at this in this respect that, hey, we're growing this, and now I'm reaping in what I've done in my lifetime. But even if we're looking at this from a year's cycle and just a whole year, we're looking back to Imbolc. What did I bring in to grow myself from? And then spring equinox, is it really coming into life? And then that Beltane, that project, that part of myself I really wanted to grow, I'm really now activating it and fertilizing it and doing everything I need to do so that it can really grow into its full bloom right now at summer solstice. And now we're collecting that energy. We're collecting it, we're growing it, it's in its prime. Whatever you brought into your year to work with, you're right in the middle of it. So it's like celebrating that. What do you need to do different? How do you really need to feed that so it thrives for the next 6 weeks? And then we're going to again move into that Lammas, that 6 weeks, that August 1st, 2nd, within our own projects of just this year. So I'm going back and forth between this year and our lifetimes, right? And then we move from that Lammas of this project of this year into the full cultivation, like really being able to reap everything that we've been energetically putting into what we first created back at Imbolc. So again, this is that fall equinox Mabon. It's also that time where I brought us up to 60. Now I'm going to take a quick break again, and we're going to come back, jump right back in, and we're going to finish that wheel. So stay tuned.
What if there were a... Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. So we are looking at the wheel, spinning in. So we're looking at the wheel, and right now we have been moving ourselves around the wheel until we've gotten to what would be called the West. And so the West is, we can associate that with fall equinox. This is where we move into that place within our lives that says, okay, here I'm about 60 years old. I'm really reaping in all that I've done. And of course, we look at retirement. Retirement usually can be start at 60, but usually now it's kind of get at 65, 66, 67. But it's during that time that we are really pulling in our life's work. What have we done for our life? What are we celebrating? It's that time of reflection as well of everything that we planted throughout our whole lives. And we're beginning to reap it in. We can, if we've had children, we can see it within our children, our grandchildren. Some people might even have great grandchildren at 60. So who knows? And within that process, this is that harvest, that full harvest of fall equinox. And then we have another last harvest of the fall. And if we go another 15 years, it brings us up to 75. And of course, we are growing to be, we can be 80, we can be 90, we could be 100. And I'm just kind of giving it to us in these 15-year increments, but we can also shift it all to 20-year increments. So if we were to get to, this period of time, we would have reaching, if we did 60 at 15, so I'm not going to do the math right now because I'm on camera and it's not working out. But I just want to say we can extend this time at 75. This is that time of the final harvest. It's also known, we know it as the Day of the Dead. We can also, within some of the ceremonies and whatnot, this is that time of death. It's where we begin to really bring in all that we've done in our lives, all that we have, connected to. And again, we're living longer. This is, if we think about a couple hundred years ago, 75 was a really long life for people. But now we still have at least 20 more years for many people, right? And so looking at that place, this is where many times the wheel ends for a cycle and begins what's called a new year. So this is also known as Samhain, even though you can read it, it's a Gaelic term, it's an earth-centered term. It doesn't read that way. It looks like Samhain, but it's actually pronounced Samhain. And this is that final time of our lives where we're reflecting on everything that we've done. This was this lifetime. What were my challenges? What were my triumphs? What did I achieve? Who's around me? Do I have family, or do I have community, or am I alone? So we begin to tap into those end of life questions and processes and reflections. And then usually this is the time that we give our bodies back to the earth. And this is the composting period. So between October 31st, November 1st, 2nd, so we're going to write it November 1. That's the 6-week mark from Mabon. This is that part of us that begins to compost the energies, just like if we were to look at nature. Nature, usually in the northern hemisphere, has that, the leaves begin to fall right around, equinox. And by November 1, most of the leaves are off. Everything is now on the ground. The leaves are mulching. They're mulching the earth. They're feeding the roots. They're going back to really bring that information of that life cycle, that whole life cycle. Those leaves went through that whole year-long life cycle, and now they're mulching the roots of that tree. But we're looking at ourselves in a lifespan. We've had this whole lifetime, and our life lessons are our compost. It mulches us because from November 1 to December 21st, give or take, is the process of that reflection. It's the death. It's the decomposition of what we once were in this last lifetime, or what that tree was, or that rose bush, or whatever, that we can look at the plant world to really see how this works for us, right? And then what happens is that from that churning and the mulching of all that we once were, we move into the stillness of the winter solstice. Again, this is the northern hemisphere. We can flip this around and look at it for the southern hemisphere. However, the seasons are slightly different. It's a little bit more tropical, but it's not, they still have, they still have the different temperate zones, of course, as we go further down, but sometimes it feels a little different than North America, or the northern hemisphere. Let me see if I can get my words right. But again, when we move through the composting and the death cycle from Day of the Dead, Samhain, we move into, again, Yule, and this is that part where we return to stillness. Now, if we were looking at ourselves in reincarnation, this is where our body composts into the earth. I talked about this a few episodes ago, maybe a few more, a couple weeks ago, where our bodies let go of our corporeal vessels. And then our etheric bodies hold the imprint. That's like the compost of what we were going to bring some back into in our next life. That kind of goes into what's called the cosmic memory. And then we let go of the astral, and we let go of the old ego, and we move into this place of reflection. And in that reflection, we review our life, we review all that's happened. And it's a part of us to also become really connected into who were we in that last life, if it's a whole lifetime. But if we only look at the wheel for a year, who were we in this last year? What did I learn? What were my challenges? What were my gifts? What were my achievements, right? Who did I spend my time with? Who was significant, or what was significant? And so it's that, again, it's that reflection time. And when we move into the Yule season, it's that stillness of being with the reflection, of letting it work us, letting it work and helping us evolve. This is the evolution. And so we connected to the seasons. Our ancestors have been doing this from time immemorable, but we've lost this path over the last several hundred years, especially with the different industrial revolutions and the technological revolution and all these different revolutions. We've gotten further and further away from the natural cycles and rhythms that are all around us. And they teach us so much when we can connect into them. They could be like, oh, this is the season that I am in. What's happening in my life? What am I actually doing? And our lives are in sync, whether we are conscious of it or not, with what's happening, and we can actually work that. Now, if you're going back and forth between hemispheres, you might be like, whoa, what's happening here, right? But where are you dominantly? Where is that time spent for most often? And again, so then we go through that process at Yule of the reflection, the learning, the growing. And this is our spirit form. This is when we move, we let go of the soul, astral energies, we return to spirit, and then we prepare ourselves to do it over again. And that Imbolc is the preparation for us to come into a new body. It's what we're doing and preparing for the next cycle of our new incarnation. What am I here to learn? Was I, a bad person, and was I cruel and oppressive to other people in my last life? Well, I'm going to actually, this is where karma comes in. I'm going to have to learn about those lessons in this next life. I'm going to have to be at the effect of my own doing from the last life. And of course, it's threaded with so many parts of our human experience, but those are going to have themes. Those karmic themes are going to be threaded throughout each one of our human incarnations. And again, when we finally arrive, and we haven't really had this conversation yet, but when we finally arrive to total unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness, there is no right, there is no wrong. Everything is an opportunity for us to grow. When we move into the higher enlightened status, we can call it the guru status or the ascended master status, we no longer need to be in these incarnated bodies anymore. We move on to bigger things, and we're going to talk about that at another episode, but this is where we're going. This is how it's moving. And so we are getting ready for another commercial here. When we get back, we're going to dive back in. If you have any questions, this isn't a definitely you're welcome to text them out, or you're welcome to call. There's a phone number at the bottom. But we're moving through this cycle, and we're going to continue looking at how this is connected to reincarnation, karma, and how we can have a deeper meaning to our lives when we become more aware of what's happening around us. I'll see you back here in just a couple.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Hey, welcome back. So time is definitely flying over here, looking at the cycles, the wheel of the year, the wheel of our lives, right? Looking at it from seasons. If we look at ourselves growing from the conception of who we're going to become in a new life at Imbolc to the birth again at Ostara or the spring equinox, and then we hit that puberty stage usually, right around during that time of Beltane. And then we hit that fully coming into who we are as adults and figuring out our purpose and our mission in the world, which is summer solstice. And then this is where we're shining. This is who we are. This is what we're doing in the world, right? And then moving into that first harvest at 45-ish, right? And being able to really kind of embody the energies of what we're beginning to reap through all of our hard work of our dedication, our purpose, our service. And then moving in again to that Mabon time where we're looking at, well, what are we reaping? What's the full cycle of our lives? What do I have to account for? What's all the different things that I've put into the world that I'm now beginning to really see just beautifully, expand before me. And then again, after Mabon, we're looking, which is again, autumnal equinox, fall equinox, we move into Day of the Dead. And that time where we are having that final harvest, recognizing that we have fulfilled this life's mission. We're going to let go of our bodies. We're going to go ahead and prepare and compost and take everything that we've learned and grow ourselves forward, evolve, expand our consciousness for the next incarnation. So if we have one life theory, these seasons don't apply. That's why even with astrology, and that's why all of these seasons of the year were kind of stamped out when Christianity came in. That's because these were in direct opposition to one life theory. And so we had to get rid of them. And it was not okay to celebrate them. But we can feel like those, but they've been around so much longer than Christ. They've been around so much longer. And so we understand that we are these eternal beings and that we will eventually get into that place where we expand and expand into a much higher state of divine consciousness. Again, there's a lot of work to do before we get there. But we can begin to see how these cycles are so intricately part of the human experience. Again, composting it, returning to Yule, winter solstice, being in that stillness for 6 weeks before we come back into who we're going to be in the next cycle. And we can look at this in a year by creating an intention. And we can look at this throughout lifetimes, that we're bringing it forward, we're evolving, we're growing, we're giving the opportunity to make different decisions. Now, we are at the end of our time together. And like always, I'd like to just invite you to take a couple of deep breaths and bring your awareness into your heart space. We've been talking about the wheel, but really we're here celebrating the longest day, shortest night of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And in this place, I invite you to look at who you are. If you're a bloom on a flower, what color are you and what shape? What expression? And I don't want to just say about a flower, but this is who you are at this time of the year. What is the deepest, most beautiful expression of yourself? And I invite you to let that shine. For the next 6 weeks, share your authentic truth, your beauty, all that you are. Share your mission, your purpose, your service, your gifts, whatever they are. But this is that time within the year to be truly seen, known, acknowledged. The light is upon us so we can really be seen. I honor you all. I celebrate all of our unique individuality. And I invite you to come back into the present, into this place, taking a few deep breaths as we just return back to the very end of our time together. It's always a pleasure to have these shares, these shows with you. And I invite you to go out into the world, let yourself shine, stay connected, connect into all sorts of other aspects that are beginning to reveal themselves to you. You can always reach out to me at my website, www.andreadragonfly.com/media, or just connect with me on either Facebook or Instagram at connected.dragonfly, and go out and let your beauty shine. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next week.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.